Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Archie Kinnane. I'm 23 years old and I live in Brooklyn. And I work with Richard on City Atlas, and I'm also involved with Extinction Rebellion NYC, but today I'm just here representing myself. First, I just want to say that I appreciate everything this committee and Councilmember Constantinides and staff have done, and the buildings law was fantastic, and the bills today are great as well, and I fully and enthusiastically support them. I'm here to talk about citizens' assemblies, which Richard mentioned briefly. And this is a concept that is starting to be adopted all over the world. And I bring it up today because I think it's a powerful idea that might help the city do even more to decarbonize and prepare New Yorkers for the future, and could help New York City become a model for re-engaging people with the democratic process and restoring faith in government. So a citizens' assembly is a type of democratic process that brings together people from all walks of life into one room to learn, discuss, and deliberate on a topic, usually during several weekend sessions, and then, based on that, provide recommendations to their government. And so Richard mentioned the UK. I'll briefly describe what's going on there as kind of a model for what something like this could look like in New York. Climate Assembly UK was convened by 6 parliamentary committees in June of last year. A group of 110 people was chosen by civic lottery so that they represent the wider population. This group is being brought together for 8 sessions across 4 weekends to learn from a balanced group of experts about climate change and how the UK can address it, take time to discuss with one another, and then make recommendations about what should happen, which will be submitted to Parliament to form the basis of how the public wants to address the climate crisis and end emissions. There are also over a dozen municipalities hosting their own local assemblies, and France is having a national citizens' assembly as well. So through the organizations I mentioned being a part of before, I've gotten to have contact with the people running many of these citizens' assemblies, and I've learned a lot about them, and I think they seem like a really good idea, so I wanted to come in and testify about them. So first I'll talk about why I think so in a practical sense. First, a citizens' assembly lets us know exactly what people want, don't want, and would prefer without policymakers having to guess for them. Decarbonization is all about choices, like Richard kind of showed. It's about what we're willing to do and how quickly we're willing to do it. The science tells us we have to act fast, but it can be kind of difficult to predict what policies might enjoy support from the majority of the population. And as it turns out, these assemblies have revealed a much, much broader appetite for aggressive climate action than is usually assumed by conventional political mental models. When you let people sit with this information and then you ask them what we should do, almost invariably they want their government to do more. And I can pass along reports, articles, and interviews with participants that show this. Second, people are more likely to trust a program or a process that has been developed with citizen involvement because of that citizen involvement. The citizen participation gives legitimacy to the solutions offered. And third, in any large program that involves changing society and changing the way we live our lives, active public consent is critical, and we must act now to embed it in these sorts of bureaucratic processes so we can speed up this process of implementing environmental policies, everything from building solar farms and transmission lines to creating more resilient coastline. So I've said a little bit about why I think citizens' assemblies can be a practical tool for effective governance, but I also want to briefly talk about why I consider opening up more citizen involvement to be a moral issue. Just this week, news broke that JP Morgan analysts are warning their clients that there exists the threat of the collapse of civilization and the, quote, end of human life as we know it, whatever that means. And that's just the latest example of something that sounds like hyperbole coming from very serious sources. I fear that I'm seeing people I care about be set up for failure because we're pretending things will fundamentally stay the same when we know that they won't. And like Richard mentioned, there's extreme disparity in emissions. There's also extreme disparity in impacts, and I'm fully aware that I'm one of the lucky ones, and I think it's important for those of us who are to recognize that. So no matter what, the future is going to be very different. And as our city continues and accelerates the task of mitigating emissions while increasing resiliency, we need to amplify the voices of communities who have borne the brunt of climate impacts and ensure equitable involvement in the political process for us all. And as these impacts worsen, cooperation will not get easier, so I think we need to invest in community involvement now. I know that several council members, including Councilmember Lander, who was here earlier, and probably others, have championed participatory.
I do it too.
And Constantine's, thank you. I've championed participatory budgeting, which I think is fantastic, and I think a citizens' assembly could be the next step in making a government that works well for all. Like I mentioned, we're in touch with the people running these. They want to help us get started, and we'd love to connect you with them so if you'd like to explore this idea.
As I've said before, I'm interested in doing citizens' assemblies in my own council district. I think it's a matter of how do we get more than just one, right?
Exactly.
Like more than one council district. How do we engage on a citywide educational project and a citizen assembly that represents all levels of economic status in our city, that we're engaging with the families that are working hard to keep food on the table, but their family is going to be the most impacted. How do we make sure that they are constantly part of that conversation at these assemblies, and we do it in a way that allows for them to be part of it?
I absolutely agree.
So I'm committed to working that out with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and again, for all that you do.
Thank you.